Guys, welcome to the James Bond Show. I'm your host, Krazy Kajeevie, back here with no fears, limits, or substitutes. Now, what am I doing in this video? I've decided, which a few of you have asked me to do, I am going to get into my top 10 favourite James Bond villains. So these are my favourite James Bond villains, and you do not want to miss this. Now, what I want to let you know to do is in the thumbnail there, have a good look-see, be very careful, have a good look at who's in the thumbnail. And you might see a few extra James Bond villains you weren't expecting, but they deservedly deserve their place in that pantheon of Bond villains. Now, okay, in light of yesterday or the day before video, I did a video on feminism officially being in the James Bond franchise, which is basically going to be the death knell of James Bond in the new Bond film, No Time to Die. So what I would like to do, you see these shot glasses here. Little Craigie, my little man, he's fallen down here, but see these shot glasses. One is for you. One is for you guys. You guys can have the one with the Bond sandwich between the two hot ladies. That one's for you. I've got Bond here. That one's for me. And what we're going to do, guys, we are gonna, nice amount of vodka in this bottle, we're gonna have a drink and officially toast the death, the goodbye of James Bond. Now, I'm gonna turn the glass around here so you're gonna be able to see that good. Alright. Woo! Alright, that's a little full, guys. I hope you can handle it. Now listen, remember, responsible drinking. This one's mine. Now, you've always got to remember when you do have anything like some vodka straight up, you need to be very responsible. I am sick of seeing people out there drink irresponsibly. So remember, drink very responsibly. We're going to load up before we get into this. Now, of course, we are toasting. This is one for you guys. You guys go first. We're going to toast here. This is for you guys. We're going to toast to the beloved James Bond we knew, probably dying to feminism. I'm going to drink this one for you guys. Alright, that's for you. This is my one. Ooh! Vodka straight up. Oh, guys, if that doesn't wake me up, nothing will. Okay, guys, let's get right into this. Now, this is my 10 favourite James Bond villains, and I'm going to do a couple of honourable mentions, kind of at the 11 and 12 mark. So at number 12, or at least honourable mention, I'm going to put in 006 Alec Trevelyan. Now, he did not make my top 10, and I know he's a big favourite of a lot of James Bond fans. You guys really love him. I get it. However, I have a bit of a problem with Alec Trevelyan. First of all, I think he is a bit of a two-faced rip-off from Batman. He's got like two sides to him. He's got the two faces, the burnt face, the good face, the bad face, whatever. And I just feel that Sean Bean, because he was not natural with that very tough-sounding British accent, every time he was putting it on, it kind of took me out of the film. And it was like Sean Bean, this rough-as-guts type of bloke, almost like he sounded like from the back end of London or something. It sounded like he was trying to be James Bond. And I really appreciate him in areas of the film, and I appreciate the character, and I like the character. It's just the delivery of it for me always took me out of his performance a bit, that he's like trying to out-tough James Bond, and it didn't kind of work for me. And I think his best scene was when he meets Bond in that weird kind of Russian statue graveyard scene, where he was more sincere and more brought in, and I mentioned that in my GoldenEye review as well. So I liked him better there, but so he doesn't quite crack my top 10. Wait till you get to my number 1, guys. Okay, so Alec Trevelyan, honourable mention. Now, my other honourable mention is Telly Savalas as Blofeld. And again, his Blofeld is just too smooth for me. It's not quite the novel, the Ian Fleming novel Blofeld. We've never fully seen that, unfortunately. And tell you what, guys, here's an example of what the Ian Fleming novel Blofeld would look more like. Now, if you're not a Fleming fan, this might blow you away. Imagine Dave Bautista, Mr. Hinks, as Blofeld. That's actually more the description of Blofeld. He's a big, probably not as big, but he's a big physical man, and that's more in line with Fleming's Blofeld. So for me, I did like Savalas. He was, you could believe, and that's why they cast him, you could believe he would punch on and take on George Lazenby's James Bond. But again, he was just at times a little bit smooth, but he is probably my favourite Blofeld. But he comes in, well, one of my favourite Blofelds. So he comes in with an honourable mention. Okay, so I'm going to get to number 10. My number 10, and I'll tell you what, for every second one, I don't think I got much more here, but for every one I really like, stuff it. I'm already hammered. We're just going to shot this off. So everyone I really like. In fact, you know what, guys? We will save these. We will save these for the final two, okay? The final two. Okay, so number 10 is Michael Lonsdale's portrayal of Hugo Drax from Moonraker. Some fans are a little bit harsh on this James Bond villain. I think he's fantastic. He's very drow, he's very dry, but he's so fun. He's such a guilty pleasure. And he's got, written by Christopher Wood, some of the best lines ever. You sure I can't press you for a cucumber sandwich, Mr. Bond? I mean, the guy is classic, and you can see that even though Drax, Michael Lonsdale plays him very dry, he plays him at times, and this is done intentionally, like he's bored, almost like, I can't be bothered talking to you, and I can't be bothered talking to you. He's this super brain power that he's going to have a space station. In space, he's going to eradicate basically all the plebs on Earth, and then he's going to repopulate it with his perfect race. And I love his portrayal here. I think he's great. So he gets into my top 10. I just think he's too good not to have in my top 10. Now, my number 9 is, and I could have had this one up higher, and I probably should have. I find this villain is so underrated. My number 9 is Yaphet Kotto as the dual bad guy, Dr. Kananga and Mr. Big. Now, of course, he's Mr. Big with the fake makeup, the mask and stuff like that. But I love Yaphet Kotto's performance. He's almost like a half bonkers black James Bond. He dresses smoothly. The guy's got a freaking island lair. Kind of like Dr. No. He's got an island lair in Jamaica, San Monique, and he's a badass, but he can be so smooth. But then, as Mr. Big, he's scary as crap. When I was 13, he scared the crap out of me, especially in that scene where, basically he's got Tee-Hee with the clippers at Bond's finger. And you really think that he's going to have him whip that finger off. But when he's got the mask on and he's Mr. Big and he's yelling in James Bond's face, "Did you touch her? Did you touch her?" Whoa! I think as a 13-year-old, I was pooping my pants. So Yaphet Kotto's Mr. Big, Dr. Kananga, he is at my number 9. Now, number 8 is Blofeld again. But which Blofeld gets in at my number 8? Number 8 Blofeld is the unseen Blofeld from both From Russia with Love and Thunderball. The way From Russia with Love is set up near the beginning of the film with this Blofeld is brilliant. I love it. He's got both Kronstein and Rosa Klebb in his office on his yacht somewhere, and he is freaking scary as hell. We don't even see his face, but we know he's powerful, and the voice casting here is fantastic. Now, actor Anthony Dawson, who was Professor Dent in Doctor No, is playing the physical. He didn't do the voice, but he's playing the physical Blofeld here. And I think he's just the movement, everything's great. And then in Thunderball again, he's even more menacing. Just seeing the finger, press buttons and stuff like that. So that Blofeld. He's so cool. I love it. So Blofeld from Russia Love, Thunderball is my number 8. My number 7, guys, is a tie. I've got a tie here. I have to have a tie. And here's the reason why. I kind of can't separate these two. And they're kind of working, as we found out later. One is working, well, apparently working for Blofeld, and the other one here is working for Blofeld. So the double tie at number 7 is Le Chiffre and Rosa Klebb. So, of course, with what they did in Spectre, we've got now Le Chiffre as a Spectre operative. Not that most fans really believe that, but so I've got Mads Mikkelsen here as Le Chiffre, and I've got Lotte Lenya as Rosa Klebb as number 7. Rosa Klebb really was the villain of From Russia with Love. Yes, I mentioned Blofeld before as my favourite. Overall, unless I have another Blofeld in here later, as my favourite Blofeld so far at number 8. But Rosa Klebb was really the driving force and the main villain in From Russia with Love, of course, working under orders of Blofeld. So I've got Le Chiffre and Klebb there. Le Chiffre, played by Mads Mikkelsen. I mean, the guy cried blood. His banter and almost camaraderie in a villainous way against Daniel Craig's James Bond was so well performed. Both actors were great. Both kind of just shared the scene so beautifully. And they're accomplished actors really doing their bit here. So my only problem with Le Chiffre, why probably I didn't have him higher, was his death was a little underwhelming. How he was shot, obviously, and this was very faithful to the Ian Fleming Casino Royale novel. But for me, yeah, look, I mean, I'm glad they were faithful to the novel, but it was a little bit underwhelming. I would have liked to have seen a death at the hands of Bond, but not to be. But Mads Mikkelsen as Le Chiffre was really, really good. Okay, guys, so my number 6. So we're getting into the serious stuff now, guys. Number 6, Francisco Scaramanga from The Man with the Golden Gun, played by Christopher Lee. And if you research Christopher Lee and what that scary son of a bitch was into in his real life, let's just, like, and I'm not making this up, this is legit. He was into hardcore Satanism, and he admitted it. You can find interviews where he's talking about Satanism, talking about witchcraft, talking about pentagrams. You can find it. Christopher Lee, in his real life, that guy was a nutter, and he was also the cousin of Ian Fleming as well, and used to go and play golf with Ian Fleming. But his Scaramanga is, I love the way he dresses. He's almost like an equal the way he dresses in the beautiful white suits and things, against the way James Bond dresses as well. In fact, in Man with the Golden Gun, I think Scaramanga probably dresses better than Roger Moore's James Bond here. He's also got a really cool little mini henchman, almost like his own little mini-me in Knick Knack, played by Hervé Villechaize. He's got a cool car. It sprouts wings. He's got one of the greatest weapons, of course, of all time in any Bond film, the actual Golden Gun. And I'm getting one from Factory Entertainment as well later in the year. I've got mine on pre-order, and I can't wait till they get those manufactured and out. There's a little plug for Factory Entertainment. Also, his island lair. His island lair is awesome. Now, he's got a hot chick too. He's got a hot girlfriend as well in Miss Anders, played by Maud Adams. And there's something so charming about Christopher Lee's Scaramanga. He's charming, but he's ruthless. And you know, like that, one of the final scenes between them when they're having lunch, and he finally puts a gun at Bond and he says, "I could have shot you down when you landed, blah, blah, blah." The guy's psychotic. Like, he is nuts. And you really think, how is Bond going to get out of this? So, he is at my number 6. Okay, number 5. This villain was born psychotic. He was born as a Nazi experiment. He is the one, the only Max Zorin, played by Christopher Walken. And he is bonkers, psychotic, nuts. At the end, towards the end of the film, he shoots down with an Uzi. He shoots his very own people, the people that have worked for him and been loyal to him, and he mows them down with a machine gun, and he laughs while he does it. Now, even Roger Moore was a little concerned with this. Roger Moore kind of thought, oh, it's too violent, it's too full on. Well, as an audience member, I loved it. Not that I'm into mowing down people you work with or that are working for you, but he was a crazy ass James Bond villain. He also had henchmen all around him. Of course, he had Mayday, and he betrayed her, and he didn't care. Like, he betrayed other people as well, including Jenny Flex. He didn't care. He'll betray anyone that got in his way. And he saw Dr. Mortimer as his like father figure. And they had this weird, father-son, like Frankenstein and the Frankenstein monster kind of relationship. But the way Zoran would do the little, or Christopher Walken would do the little nuances. For example, in the office when he shoots the guy in the building, the guy at the newspaper, and he shoots him dead, he's like, and that would mean I would have to be dead, and shoots him. Sorry about that horrible Christopher Walken impression. Dead. I took a watch and shoved it up my ass. I'll fix it again. Sorry for the impression. But Christopher Walken is awesome, and he's great here in this film. And he's a scene stealer. He steals everything. But the little things he does, so in that office scene where Bond says to him, Roger Moore's Bond says to him, you're psychotic or whatever, and he's like, like, he doesn't fight it. He knows it. He knows Bond is right at that moment. So, that's my number 5, Max Zorin. My number 4 is, again, guys, a double. I'm sorry, but I've cheated here. I've got a double. So my number 4 is Raul Silva and Dr. No. Why? Both are hanging out on a kooky island. Both inside are angry. And I think Dr. No is even angrier, probably angrier than all the Bond villains. He's pissed. Dr. No is so pissed that others didn't want to use his genius, his skills. And then he joins up with Spectre. But there's a seething rage under Joseph Wiseman's performance. Now, with Raul Silva, he tries to act the smooth guy, the creepy guy. And he's obviously bisexual. I mean, he's got Severine hanging around. And then he sounds very gay, and he's got his hands on James Bond in a very gay way. And I tell you what, I think the bisexual aspect of the character is not only both Fleming, but actually works for this character. It gives him a different dimension, makes him spookier, scarier, and I've heard other people say this, and I agree with it. I think it gives him a different dimension, and he's kind of unhinged with it, and you don't know what he's all about. I think it's very unfortunate that the James Bond people then try to make him a Spectre operative. When Spectre came out, they tried to retcon all that and bring him into it. And to me, he's not a Spectre operative. I just think he's a guy with... He's obviously... Raul Silva's got severe mummy issues. But the way Javier Bardem plays him, especially once he pulls the fake teeth out, and his face basically all caves in, and you see what happened to his mouth and the facial structure of his mouth after he took cyanide, but he survived the cyanide, and you listen to his story, you can feel emotion for him. You can feel kind of anger towards M for how she allowed this to happen to this guy. And Javier Bardem, look, he's an Oscar-winning actor. He's an incredible actor. I think for his, even though it was a small role and very much like Joseph Wiseman's role, these guys didn't show up until way past the halfway mark of the film, which is a pity. I think it was 90 minutes it took for Javier Bardem to show up in Skyfall, and I think that's a real pity. I would have loved more screen time for Silva and more screen time for Dr. No as well, because when they have that time, when they're on screen, you can't take your eyes off them. So that is why I've got them as equal number 4. I kind of can't separate them. And Dr. No, being the classic first ever Bond villain, is kind of like my... my sentimental favourite is the best way to say it. Okay, guys, number 3. Now we're getting closer. My top 3 is Fran Sanchez, played by Robert Davi. His Bond villain isn't an evil megalomaniac trying to take over the world. Yes, he's a drug dealer. And I know some people out there have had issues with that. I don't, because the world is full of different people, horses for courses, and he happens to be a drug villain that has taken brutal revenge on Felix Leiter, had his wife raped and murdered, killed, and had Felix try to kill Felix with sharks, but had his leg bitten off. Robert Davi is so smooth and so confident, and he is, again, I think the best villains almost mirror James Bond. He is like a Mexican-style drug dealer version of Bond. And the scene between Timothy Dalton and Sanchez in his office, well, Mr. Travelman, you did all right at the tables tonight. Wow. And then, of course, Bond says to him, I'm more of a problem eliminator. The scene there is so good. And these guys almost have a semi-bromance going on, especially when Sanchez has Bond at his home and wants him to stay at his home, even though Bond's really banging Lupe up in the Acapulco mansion. And Sanchez has awesome people around him. He's got Dario around him. He's got the other little Mexicans around him. He's got, of course, he's got Milton Crest around him. He's all set up. He's set up like a gazoo. He can fly an aeroplane. He's got a badass base somewhere off in Mexico where the ground opens up and he's got helicopters. He's got tanker trucks. He's got a mansion in Acapulco. Sanchez is awesome. You know what? If I was a Bond villain for a day and I was going to be a badass, I'd probably want to be Fran Sanchez, especially with the lady he is dating, Lupe. So, number 3, that's Sanchez. My number 2 Bond villain. Probably the greatest Bond film villain of all time. Now you're thinking, wait a minute, how can this guy, who I haven't announced yet, how can he be the greatest Bond villain of all time, Krazy Kajeevie, if you've got him at number 2? Well, you're going to find out why. So my number 2 is Gert Frober as Auric Goldfinger. He is scene-stealing. Now, he may not even be I don't know, he's more a best, even though this is my favourite list, he's probably more the best iconic Bond villain, where maybe my favourite might slightly lean to Sanchez. But Auric Goldfinger is bonkers. He's batshit crazy for gold. He's old and he's creepy. He's trying to crack on to pussy galore. This guy, he's so full of confidence and arrogance. He explains his plan to people, then he kills them. Even when it looks like most of them are going to be in on his plan eventually, after they laugh at him at first, then he kills them. He's got Oddjob, but then, of course, like I mentioned, he cracks on to pussy galore because he's just confident and he's full of himself. He also takes on Bond when he comes out at the end of the film with a gun, and he takes Bond on in a physical fight. And he's not afraid to turn on his own. Like I said earlier, the best villains will turn on their own men as well. And he turns on, it's not that he turns on Oddjob, he knows Oddjob is locked inside the vault at Fort Knox. And he's like, well, part of the job, boom, and he locks him. He's ready to blow that bomb up even with Oddjob there. Now, even though Michael Collins dubbed the voice for Goldfinger, the amalgamation, the match, the combination between Gert Frober and Michael Collins is just incredible. And he is quintessential best James Bond villain. Now, my number 1 James Bond villain. My number 1. Let's get a drum roll. Oh, by the way, I should have drank that for Goldfinger at number 2. And for number 1, here is to my number 1 James Bond villain of all time, Barbara Broccoli. Here's to you, Barbara. That's it, guys. My number 1 Bond villain is Barbara Broccoli. How many of you, be honest in the comments, how many of you saw this coming? Okay. Barbara Broccoli has the best henchman around. Now, her ultimate weapon is feminism. And this Bond villain has even, I think a real classic villain has turned against her parentage. Her father, who was a great ally of James Bond, his name was Cubby Broccoli. And this Bond villain has turned against his advice when his advice was, hey, don't let outside influences come into James Bond. But she's like, nah, screw you, Daddy. When you die in the casket, put the dirt over, you're 6 feet under. I'm going to take all your money and I'm going to take the beloved franchise you loved And as soon as you're 6 feet under and cold in the ground, I'm going to make male M, I'm going to make M a woman. I'm going to make him a woman, and then I am going to empower women. And I'm going to have Wei Lin crap on Bond and talk down on Bond. And I'm going to basically make James Bond a comedic character, just like I did in Die Another Day when I had him hang gliding or whatever, paragliding, whatever you want to call it, surf skiing with polar bears and ice. Yeah, that's what I think I'll do. I will run James Bond character into the ground. So congratulations, Barbara Broccoli, you're my number one. And now you're going to kill off